Hello everyone, welcome back to part 3 of our leather pouch project. In part 1 we made the mold, we wet formed the leather. Part 2 we removed it from the mold, we trimmed it up a bit, we made a few other pieces that we're going to need to finish the project, and we're up to this point right now. So what you're going to want to do is, you're going to need yourself some snaps. It comes with a little anvil that has concave side on one side and a flat side on the other. It has this little setting tool and of course the actual snaps. What you're going to want to do is, with that little block that we made, I drew a center line on this block. Okay, get yourself the snaps ready. We're going to be using these little type here because they fit nice on there. They come in all different sizes. I don't know exactly what this size is, but as you can see, it fits pretty nice in there. And we're going to put the snap down approximately where we want it. Okay, now that's all going to depend on the project that you're doing, the aesthetics. I mean, it could be down here, you know, it could be higher up here, but I kind of like right there. So you make yourself a little mark in there. Move that out of the way, so you have a mark going that way, and then eyeball down, and you end up with a little plus mark right there, and that's going to be your center. Remove the block, and you need yourself a leather punch. Okay, these are on a wheel. Punch a couple sizes until you get to the one that fits the tightest. Okay, because you're going to want to push this in and you're going to want it to be tight. As you can see, that's a little hard to get in there. Okay, this other one I made was a little loose, so I'm going to stick with the size that I have. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put this back in and I'm going to wiggle it around. As you can see, it's moving up right there, and that should give me just enough to be able to push this in. There you go. It's nice and tight. So we have our size. We're going to get ready to punch our hole. Now you could ruin your whole project if you don't punch this in the right place. So what you're going to want to do is you want to eyeball it right onto that little plus mark you made. And I can see I'm a little bit off to the right. Just barely touch it till you get it where you want it to be. And just look at it until you get it in the center. I'm going to say right there. Punch your hole, give it a little wiggle, and there you got it. Okay, now you're going to use this flat one that's going to come up through the bottom. Get that in there. Then you're going to use this one, place it over the top. Okay, as you can see, that's pretty good. It's a little tiny bit off, but we're good with that. You're going to use your block again. You're going to place this anvil with the flat side, because this is the flat side, on your block. Place it on there, and you're going to get your setting tool. Now, you don't want to hit it straight down like that. Okay, what you're going to want to do is go around. Okay, now what that's going to do is that's going to round off. You have your post coming up. It's going to round it off like this. Okay, if you hit it straight down, okay, it's going to flatten it and it's going to end up splitting and it's not going to be a good connection. So you want to take your time. Hopefully you can see how that's starting to round over. Make sure your anvil is down there. You can see it rounded up good. You take it, try to spin it. If it doesn't spin, you're tight enough. Okay, so there you go. Now you have your snap on here. So now we'll move off to the next part. In the first video you saw me made this strip that I was going to use for the belt loop. I decided that it was too narrow and I made this one. For the sake of time, I finished it off so we can get to the next step, but I'll show you how I did that. Okay? Take something round like this. Use a pencil, draw your line. You can get yourself some leather cutters. You could use a razor blade, cut around it. I find that these are easier. Just follow the line as best you can. Then you get yourself your little sanding block. As you can see, it sands very easily. After it's dyed, it gets very stiff. You see the difference of the leather before it's dyed or wet molded, how pliable and soft it is, and how stiff that this gets. Next, you're going to want to have what's called a edging tool. Again, when you start getting good at working with leather, you can make yourself little cases for everything. And what you're going to do is, once you figure out where you want your belt loop, the way you want to do this is fold this over. Okay, this is going to get stitched on right there. Okay, and you're going to do a stitch line all the way around here like this and across. Okay, you want this stitch line to end up right about there, just below the surface of this. So you place this on the back, eyeball that, and then you're going to look down here. Okay, you don't want this to be past this point right here, okay, because you're going to be stitching across here and you don't want that to get in the way. So technically this is going to be like this, in here on the back and to right about that edge. So that's where I have this one here. Okay, it's going to go right there, as you can see. And I made myself a little template for a belt. Okay, the belts I use are anywhere from 1.5 inches to 1 3/4 inches. So I made this little template that added a 1/16 of an inch in the width, so that when you make your belt loops, you can test them, make sure they fit. Okay, so obviously this one's going to fit. Alright, let me get a few other things ready and then I'll be back. Okay, I'm back. I just realized that I showed you the tool, the edging tool, but I didn't really use it and show you how to use it. So this is a number 2. They come in different sizes, as the width and the bevel that it makes. Be careful, this is very sharp. So what we're going to use the bevel tool for is, after we made this piece, okay, we're going to figure out, like I said, where it's going, and we're going to want to bevel the edges before we have this stitched on, because it's much easier now. Okay, so we're going to want to bevel the inside, the outside, all the way around, okay, up to about here. You're not going to want to bevel this side, because this side is going to get glued on and stitched to the back, so you don't want the bevel over there. And this side is going to get glued down to this side, so you don't want the bevel underneath here, okay? So you can make yourself a little reference line if you want on where not to bevel it, and I'll show you how the bevel tool works. I'll show it to you on this strip of leather here. So basically you have that little cutout there, place it on about that angle there, and just press it. Okay, nice smooth stroke, and you'll get that little sliver there. And as you can see, it leaves a nice clean bevel. Okay. Once you have everything beveled on this piece, you're going to want to get yourself something to burnish it. Okay. And burnishing, basically, you're just going to be rubbing it to make the surface smooth, and it gets very, very shiny and hard. This is a little burnishing tool I made. They sell these similar to this. I've actually made a machine, which I'll show you when I get towards the later steps. You could just use a regular piece of wood. This actually came off a piece of a beater or something. I just stuck it in a piece of wood. This is just another piece of wood that's been sanded down. You could use Sharpie, you can use a pencil. People like to use a bit of a deer antler, okay? And the premise behind this is you'll wet the edge, okay? You'll take whatever tool you're using and you'll start rubbing it, okay? You want friction. Go nice and fast. Don't put too much pressure on it because you could actually dent it, okay? Let's get a little water on it. I'm not sure if that'll show up, but it starts to get very shiny. If you had a tool, you could use a tool. Like I said, I have a machine. It's electric. So you're going to want to get this as smooth as you can. As you can see here, hopefully it shows up. Get a couple little rough spots there. Get a little water on it. Okay. Hopefully you can see that shiny part there. And that's called burnishing. You can also get some beeswax and soften the beeswax up, put it on the edge, rub it in, and then give it a final coat, a final rub with the burnishing tool. Okay, so we have that ready. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to get our belt loop. We're going to get our front piece. We're going to line this up, okay? You want the shiny side out and the rough side in. And you're going to get an approximation where you want this now. Remember what I was talking about? We want our stitch line. We'll just draw ourselves a little line there. To end up being right, if this wasn't here, right around there, okay? So when we fold this over, this is just about at the bottom there, okay? I'll place this back together. Double, triple, quadruple check your work. Make sure you're good. So we're going to go with right about there. Okay, give ourselves a little witness mark there, and we'll double check it again. As you can see, it's right about at that edge, which is good. Okay, now you're going to want to glue this on. And the glue is just really to hold it until you stitch it, okay? So I'll give you a little tip on the gluing. We're going to be using regular contact cement, okay? Shake it up. This stuff is sticky. Should have probably wore some gloves. Okay. That's giving me a little problem there, huh? Okay. You don't need a lot. I'll show you a little trick that I do, okay? Normally what you're going to do is you're going to put contact cement on one side and then the other side, and you need to let it sit for at least 15 minutes, but not more than a couple hours, okay? I like to let it sit for about 20 to 30 minutes until when you touch it, it should not be tacky anymore, okay? So now again, we have this folded over. What I do is place a little bit of glue, just like that. Excuse me. I don't get it all the way around the edge and everything, because again, this glue is just holding it until you tack it, okay? Make sure you have this oriented in the correct position, and you're going to want to make sure that you center it on here. So we have our line, which is right there. You can see it. We have a line on here where our stitch line is going to be. And just touch it to that. Lift it up. As you can see, it left some glue right there. So now you know exactly where the glue is going to be. Okay? Get yourself a little bit of extra glue. And that's all you need. Okay? So we'll let these two pieces sit for a little bit. I'm going to, like I said, about minimum 15 minutes, no longer than 2 hours, and I'm going to usually wait about 20 minutes to make sure that it's you can touch it and it's not tacky. I'll be back when that dries. Okay, the glue's set up. And you want to make sure you have this oriented right. This is going to go like this. This needs to be glued down this way. Okay, so you have your little witness mark right there, right there. Get it centered. Press it down. You can get your little mallet with the nylon end. Kind of sets it in there. Okay, before you stitch it up, you're going to want to make sure that you have everything correct. Okay, we have that on there. Place that on the back. That looks good. Stitch line should end up right up there at the top. Okay. As you can see, it's stuck. Now, if you made a mistake and it's not lined up, you can yank it off at this point and then reset it. Okay, that's why I only use that little dab of glue in the middle, because if I did make a mistake and I yanked it off, I'm not going to have any weirdness going on around here where the glue was in case it rips some of the leather off. Okay, so just being in that little middle section, I could pull it off, re-glue it back on, and you'd never know. Okay, now I made some tools. You can use other things, but I made these tools specifically for my leather work. And they're basically ways for me to mark the lines and my stitch width. They sell all of this stuff, not particularly these type of tools because I made them to suit my purposes, but they do make all kinds of tools that you can use. There's a roller that'll give you the exact stitch width. There are dividers. You can use a regular pair of dividers to make your lines. Okay, what I do is I use these. These are made out of metal. Okay, and these give me two different widths of where the stitch line is going to be comparable to the edge. Okay, so for the inside, take your tool. I don't think this is going to show up in the camera, but it might. You can hardly see that, but what that did was that left a little line right around there. Okay, so we're going to want our stitches, like I said, to end up right about there on the inside. Okay, so we got to just draw a little line right across here. Let's double check it, triple check it. See how that looks? That looks good. And I'll see if I could, I need to get into a little bit of light here. I'm going to move off camera for a second so I can see this. Alright, hopefully you can see that now. I put a pencil line around where this tool made the mark. As you can see, it follows that right around there. Okay, next I'm going to determine what I want my stitch width to be. These are just markers for me. Okay, so what I'm going to do is place it right in the corner, give it a little press, go over to this corner, give it a little press, start following that line all the way around. Now come in from both angles. Now as you can see right across here, it's the last two dots. Hopefully you can see them. Let me point them out to you. One here and one here. Okay, it's wider than this, so if I would have kept going all the way around, it wouldn't look even symmetrical. Okay, so that's fine. Again, this is a very light duty type pouch, so you don't have to worry about having everything extremely perfect as far as the stitching goes. You're not going to really even see that too much. Okay, because this is getting folded over like that. Alright, now you're going to get yourself some of this wax coated thread. This is a 4-ply thread. Okay, this is pretty thick stuff. We definitely don't need this thickness for something this small. It really, the weight of this knife, you know, is absolutely nothing. It doesn't need to be extremely thick like this. So what I do is I separate these. Okay, depending on the project, sometimes I'll use 3 of them, sometimes I'll use 2. For this one we're going to use 2. What you're going to want to do is, as you separate it, spin it back up. Okay, and then rub it with your fingers. Since it's wax coated, they'll stick back together. So now we have a 2-ply. So here I have a length of it that I've twisted back together. This stuff is extremely strong. You cannot break this with your hand. Next, you're going to want to get yourself a little punch. Okay, I don't even know where I got this, but it works perfect for this application. Get yourself a little backer board. Place your piece down. Get your mallet again. You're going to want to go into those little indentations you made and give it a little shot. Now again, you can use, there's many tools that'll punch the holes for you. Hopefully you can see that. Okay, so we have our holes. Did I get one there? Let's see. Yes, I did. Okay. Next, you want to get yourself a drill. And we're going to drill these out. Watch your fingers on the back, because that's going to come through. I'll continue drilling those and I'll be right back. Okay, we have all our holes drilled. Hopefully you can see that. Next we're going to get our thread. And you're going to want to get it to be at least 3 times the length of the stitch. So if we started here and we went all the way around, we'd want this to be at least 3 times. I go 4 times or more depending, especially if it's a small area, so I have some to work with. And you need to get yourself some of these upholstered needles. They're not sharp on the edges, okay? I like to use this size. It's about 1.5 inches. You need to have pliers handy, okay? And you're going to, like I said, place the needle on both ends. Little tip, take your pliers and squeeze the end. It kind of flattens it, so you're able to get it through the eye of the needle easier. Just pull it through about 1.5 inches. Bend it over. Okay. What we're going to do now is a saddle stitch. Okay. That stitching pony that I was talking about, or if I didn't mention it yet, I'll put a little clip in on how to use the stitching pony. But that stitching pony will place, you can place the leather in there and hold it while you're stitching. I prefer with small objects like this to hold it in my hand, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start in one of the corners. I'm going to go all the way around, and then I'm going to come back across. The normal way you would do it is, you would, let's say you started here, you stitch all the way around, and then you go back 2 stitches. For uniformity, I'll go here, around, and then I'll continue across to here, and I'll end my stitch here. So this is how you do a saddle stitch. Take one of the needles, run it through, and even that up, okay? Take the other one, place it through, pull it taut. Now on the back side, you take this thread, hold it over, take this one, and feed it through. At this point, give it a little tug, okay? And that's your first stitch. Take your other thread through here, turn it over, hold it that way, feed the second one through. Give it a little pull. Next one, pull it through, hold it out of the way. You want to try not to go through the thread, so by pulling it this way, you're freeing up the hole to get the second one in. And this is the reason too I like to use these smaller needles. If you were using a big needle like this, it'd be very hard to get it through the hole. Give it a little tug. Down through. Back on this side. Give it a little tug. Continue around. Like I said, this is what's going to be holding it. And the great thing about a saddle stitch is if one of the threads get cut, the other one will still hold it. If anyone has had a loose thread on their clothes or something and you tugged on it and you went and you saw the whole thing strip out, the idea of a saddle stitch is that won't happen. Only one of them will come out. Okay, so we're back at the beginning where we started. Pull that through. Snug everything up. So now there's a few threads going through that hole. Be careful when you stick it in. It's going to be tight. So now, normally at this point, you'd go back 2. And like I said though, I'm going to go right across the top again. Now it's going to be pretty difficult to pull this through. That's where your pliers come in handy. Grab it, pull it through. If you yank on it really hard, it's going to actually pull right through the eye. So just be aware of that. Give that a little snug. Okay. Remember the direction you're going now. Hopefully you can see that. Now we have 2 threads going across the top. Take this. It's going to get stiffer and stiffer now because there's more and more threads in there. See it? I pulled it right through. Not a problem. Give this another little twist. Get your needle. Rethread it. Like I said, if you couldn't get that through, squeeze the end, flatten it out, you'll get it in. Again, this is the reason why I leave a lot more thread than it normally calls for, as far as the 3 times the length that you're going around, because you end up with little tiny pieces and it's kind of hard to work with. Pull it through, hold it over, that through there, And be careful because you can poke yourself and it's not fun. Alright, we're down to our last one. Place that through there. On this one it doesn't matter if the thread comes off because we're at the end anyway. Okay. Remove your needles. Make sure this is nice and tight. We have our stitching going around. Like I said, this is what's holding it, not the glue. Okay. Next we're going to trim this off. You want to get pretty close to the bottom. I don't know if that shows up, but there's a very, very fine nub there. You want to get yourself a little lighter. Heat that up. Press it down. Heat that up. Press it down. Okay. Now the next step is, if you feel this, it's very proud of this surface. You don't want to flatten that out. I have this little anvil that I purchased at Harbor Freight. This is great for doing what I'm going to be doing now. It's also great when you're setting the rivets. You got a nice hard surface. Get yourself a little something that's clean. Okay, you want to place that on there. Get your hammer with the nylon side. Tap them down. Hopefully you can see that. It kind of flattens them out. We're on this side. Now it's almost perfectly smooth. Let me show you a little bit of different stitches. Obviously you can use a different color thread. This is a white thread. Okay, this knife sheath that I made was done with the white thread, so you have a different contrast. Okay, this one was done, instead of punching the holes with that awl that I have. Okay, this was used. This was made using a punch. Okay, and you get a different effect. As you can see, the holes are very, very prominent. So you'll have a different effect. This one here was done with the method that I'm doing right now. So you have a smaller hole. I used instead of the 4-ply thread. Okay, I used a 2-ply thread. So you can see the difference here. It's a cleaner, finer look. I shouldn't say cleaner. It's a different look. It's finer, right? So the reason why I use the 4-ply on, like, let's say a knife sheath, okay, this has a welt in it, and a welt is basically an extra piece of leather. So when you make a knife sheath, obviously you're gonna have a blade, right? So when you slide that in, you don't want the blade to come in contact with the threads. So the welt that's running down here separates the threads from the inside. Hopefully you could see that right there. That's the welt. So the knife blade never ever touches the threads, because if it did, obviously it would just cut them. So down the road I'll show you how to make one of these. I actually made this knife from a knife blank and some walnut handles, and made this sheath to go with it. Again, this is with the white contrasting threads. It's a different type of sheath. It's another knife that I refurbished. But I digress. Let's get back to our project. Okay, so we're at this point. I'm going to fold this over. Again, we'll do our checking. Make sure where we want this. And like I said, we don't want it past this, right? Because this is the area right here where we're going to stitch. So we definitely don't want that to be in this area. So we're going to take our pencil again and we'll eyeball right there. Okay, so now we have a little mark that we don't want this, the end of this, to go past that. So that's wrong. Okay, that's right there. Now it could even go up higher if you wanted, and you just flatten this down. Another trick to bending this: if you take a little bit of water on your finger and you put it on here, let it soak in a little bit, it'll bend really easy, and then when you flatten it out, okay, it'll stay very, very flat when it dries. Again, we see how leather stiffens up once it's wet and then dries. So we're going to use the same method that we used before with the glue. Regular contact cement. Shake it up. Whoa, almost lost it all. Look at that, had a catastrophe. Cap came right off. Pardon that interruption. I gotta try to get that out of there. Give me 1 second, I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. I'm gonna leave all of that mess that just happened in the video, just to show you that not everything works out exactly the way you planned it. It's not a perfect world, and stuff does happen. It took me a long time to get all of that glue off of my hands. There's still a lot of it on there, as you can see. So basically, we got the cap back on, and we'll continue on where I left off. So we're going to make sure we know where this is at. We left that little witness mark right there. Get ourselves a little glue. You don't need a lot. We have our witness mark right there. Put a little dab, like I said, keep it in the center. Flip it over. Touch it, let it go. So now you have your little dab right there. Put a little extra, a little too much. Another little shot over here. And we're going to let that sit for the 20 minutes. Again, no less than 15, no longer than 2 hours. So 2 hours is quite a bit, but like I said, let it sit for about 20 minutes. And we'll be back when that sets up. Okay, the glue is ready to go. Make sure you remember that witness mark. Press that down. Get your nylon. Got a couple shots. Double check it. Make sure you're right where you want to be. We're good. We're not past this point here. Our stitch is right about at the top there where I wanted it to be. So we're good. Because remember, at this point you could take it off and you could redo it. Okay? You can see, look, it comes up, right? Get that back where we want it. Again, this is just to hold it when we stitch it. Alright, it looks pretty decent. Now, we'll get our tools again. And we're going to make our mark. Let's make a line going across. Just grab a straight edge. Figure right about there. That'll be our top stitch. Take our tool. You can see it better on this side. I won't have to highlight it. That's going to be our stitch line. Get our marking tool. We're going to start to mark this up. Remember what I said, come in from the ends. See that one? Actually came out perfect there. Over here you can see it's a little narrower. It doesn't matter. Once you start stitching it up, it's all going to look great. Set this aside. Get our little backer board. Place this down. Get our punch again and our hammer. This time we're going to be using the brass side. Start poking your holes. Now, if you didn't have these tools like I have that I made, you could just take the punch, follow along a line that you made with a scribe. Okay, so we got all the holes there. Put this into the drill. Remember, don't have your fingers in the back where it comes out. Drill them in. There's our holes. Now, like I was saying, if you didn't have the tools, the specific tools that I made, you can use a pencil and draw your line around, and then use this to mark your dots. I made various other little things to use. I have some drill bits that I made here. Let me jump these out. And I put them in a drill and brought it against an angle grinder and smooth them down to make different sizes. You could actually use a regular drill bit too to drill the hole. I find that's unnecessary, but you might want something, you know, that's a little smaller. So I made various sizes. As you can see, that it's a little bit thinner on the end, so it depends on what the application is. As you start doing this stuff, you'll figure out what works for you. Let me get rid of this. we're going to get our thread. Through the needle. This side came a little untwisted. We'll get that twisted back in. When you make the 2-ply, like I said, you twist the two together. It's waxed, go like that, and it'll stick back together. Now we're going to complete our saddle stitch. Now, same thing, we're going to start in this corner, we're going to go all the way around, and we're going to go back to this corner again. The normal way to do it is if you started in this corner, you'd come around, you'd end in this corner, and you'd go back 2 stitches. The reason why, again, I don't like doing that is you'll see the double stitches over here, and it'll kind of look uneven. So if I do the double stitches across the top, it'll have a nice uniform pattern. So one more time, I'll show you how to start this. Get that evened out. Come down the top. Hold that over. Pull it through. Snug it up a little bit. Down the top. Hold it over. Go through. Snug it up. Okay. I'll finish stitching around here and we'll be back. Okay. Finished up those stitches. Came out nice. Remember to place it down on something hard. Get yourself a little backer. Get it nice and flush. Do both sides. And now your belt loop is finished. Okay. Here was our sample belt. Let's make sure it fits in. Perfect. Okay, and we got room to spare. So a good 2-inch belt will should slip into that no problem whatsoever. And then even the smallest little belt will work. All right, on to the next step. Let me get this out of the way.